By the time I pulled into the church parking lot, the funeral had already started. Rain hammered the windshield so hard it blurred the white steeple into a ghost. I killed the engine, grabbed my coat, and ran through puddles and heels that were never meant for mud and wet gravel. The bell in the tower was ringing slow and heavy, each toll landing in my chest like a fist. I was halfway up the stone steps when the front doors opened and my sister stepped out. Denise didn't look surprised to see me. That was the first thing that told me this was deliberate. She stood under the awning in a black coat, dry-eyed, lips set, one hand still on the church door as if she'd been waiting for this exact moment. "You're not coming in," she said. For a second, I honestly thought I'd heard her wrong. "Move." "No. Denise, our mother is in there." She gave a sharp, humorless laugh. "Now she is." I stopped so abruptly I almost slipped on the wet stone. Behind her, I could see the dim sanctuary, rows of people turning their heads, the pale blur of flowers near the altar. Closed casket. White lilies. Mama's favorite hymn playing low on the organ. I took one step forward. Denise planted herself in the doorway. "You don't get to show up after all this time and pretend you're the grieving daughter," she said, not even bothering to lower her voice. "You already left her once. I won't let you use her funeral to make yourself feel better." The few people close enough to hear went still. Cousin Rita looked down at her purse. Pastor Collins stared at the floor. My own aunt turned her face away. My mouth went dry. I called. I texted. I asked you what hospital she was in. "And I answered you," Denise snapped. Too late. I could feel the rain dripping off my hair, running cold down my back. "You don't get to decide whether I say goodbye to my own mother." Her eyes flashed then, and for the first time I saw something beneath the anger. Not grief. Not exactly. Something older. Harder. Something that had been feeding itself for years. "Yes," she said. "I do." Then she pulled the church door shut in my face and turned the lock. I stood there staring at my own reflection in the stained glass while my mother's funeral went on without me. I could hear the muffled hymn through the door. Could hear someone crying inside. Could hear my own breathing, shallow and shaking, as if my body couldn't decide whether to collapse or break something. At one point I pressed my palm flat against the glass and caught a glimpse of the casket spray, a ribbon of blue hydrangeas woven through the lilies. Mama had grown hydrangeas along the side of our house for 25 years. I used to cut them for her every summer and put them in chipped mason jars on the kitchen table. Now I was outside in the rain like a stranger. When the eulogy started, I sat down on the top step because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. And through the thick church door, through rain and organ music and humiliation, I heard my sister say, "In the end, Mama knew who stayed." That was the sentence that almost broke me. If you're enjoying stories about real-life challenges, personal growth, and unforgettable life lessons, consider subscribing to the channel. New stories are released regularly, and you won't want to miss the next one. My name is Nora Bennett, and until that morning, I had spent the better part of 15 years trying to believe there was still a bridge back to my family. Not a perfect bridge. Not even a sturdy one. Just something narrow and shaky that might still hold if I crossed it carefully enough. I was 41 years old, living in Nashville, working long shifts as a hospice nurse, and carrying around the kind of guilt that settles into your bones so quietly you stop noticing its weight until something cracks. My marriage had ended 3 years earlier. No dramatic affair, no screaming plates, no cinematic goodbye. Just two tired people sitting at opposite ends of a couch one night, realizing love had slowly turned into logistics. After the divorce, everybody told me to go home for a while, but home had never been a simple place for me. Home was Cedar Hollow, Tennessee, a town small enough that everyone still remembered who won the state baseball championship in 1994 and who got pregnant before graduation in 2002. Home was a white clapboard house on Maple Ridge Road with a sagging porch, blue hydrangeas, and a mother who could make a meal out of almost nothing. It was also my older sister Denise, who had spent most of our adult lives acting like my existence was a personal inconvenience. Denise was 4 years older than me, and even when we were kids, she had a way of taking up all the air in a room. She was the louder one, the tougher one, the one who didn't mind telling people exactly what she thought. I was quieter. Softer, Mama used to say, though not in a way that made me feel weak. More in a way that made me feel seen. When our father died of a heart attack in the aisle of a hardware store, I was 24 and Denise was 28. Everything after that split in two. Denise stayed. I left. That was the version of the story our town preferred because it was simple. It fit into a sentence people could repeat over potluck casseroles and gas station coffee. Denise stayed to help their mother. Nora ran off to the city. What nobody ever included was that Mama had pushed me to go. I'd been accepted into a nursing program in Nashville a month before Dad died. After the funeral, I told Mama I would stay. She stood at the sink, washing a plate that was already clean, and said, without turning around, "If you stay out of guilt, baby, you'll hate this house before the year is over. And then you'll hate yourself for hating it." Denise heard that conversation, and I think something inside her hardened right then. Because nobody had told her she could leave. She'd married young, divorced younger, and by then she was working double shifts at Martin's Diner while juggling bills and heartbreak and a pride too big to ask for help. When Mama's arthritis got worse, Denise naturally became the one nearby. The one who drove her to appointments. The one who fixed the leaking toilet. The one who knew which pharmacy still gave a senior discount on Thursdays. And I became the daughter who called. At first, I called every night. Then every other night when clinical rotation swallowed my time. Then twice a week. Then more often again once I started working. I sent money when I could. I came home for Christmas, Easter, birthdays, one Thanksgiving out of 2. I painted Mama's guest room. I took her to lunch. I braided her hair at the kitchen table while Denise rolled her eyes and washed dishes too hard. But love done from a distance always looks smaller to the person carrying the daily burden. Especially when that person is already drowning. In the last 2 years of Mama's life, the ground shifted beneath all of us. She was diagnosed first with Parkinson's, then with the kind of memory trouble doctors say gently, as if kindness can reduce the damage. Some days she was completely herself, sharp, funny, still able to beat anybody at Scrabble. Other days she forgot what month it was or called me by her sister's name. Denise took over more and more. She handled the medications, the appointments, the visiting nurses. She started answering Mama's phone because, according to her, it just confuses her when everybody calls at once. At first, I was grateful. Then uneasy. Then dependent. Every update about my mother came through my sister. She's sleeping. She had a rough day. She doesn't feel like talking. She gets agitated after phone calls. The explanations came so steadily, so reasonably, that I accepted them even when something in me resisted. I increased the money I sent. I offered to take time off and come stay for a week. Denise said no, it would only throw Mama off her routine. The last time I heard Mama's voice clearly was on my birthday. 41, she said, laughing a little. That's old enough to know better and young enough to do it anyway. I remember leaning against my kitchen counter, smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. You feeling okay today? I miss your face, she said. Then I heard Denise in the background, Mama, your soup's getting cold. And Mama's voice went small and distracted. I better go, sweetheart. That was 6 weeks before she died. The text came at 5:12 on a Tuesday morning while I was getting ready for work. Mama passed at 3:40. Funeral Thursday at 11. Please don't make this harder than it already is. No call. No details. No hospital. No chance to hear my mother's name spoken out loud by someone who loved her. I called Denise 7 times. She didn't answer once. I called Pastor Collins, and he told me the arrangements had already been made. I drove 4 hours to Cedar Hollow anyway. And my sister locked me out. After the service ended, people came down those steps one by one, each of them avoiding my eyes with the awkwardness reserved for scenes they didn't want to witness but would absolutely talk about later. A few patted my shoulder. A few said nothing. My Aunt Linda offered me a damp tissue and whispered, "Maybe this isn't the time." I almost laughed in her face. If not at my mother's funeral, when exactly was the time? Denise came out last, carrying a long white box of sympathy cards against her chest. She looked exhausted but victorious, which was a combination I had never seen on a human face before and hope I never do again. "Was that enough for you?" I asked. Her jaw tightened. "Go back to Nashville." "Why didn't you tell me sooner that she was dying?" "She was dying for months." I stared at her. "Then why didn't you tell me?" She shifted the box in her arms. "Because every time you came around, it became about your guilt. Your tears. Your dramatic promises to help. I didn't need another person to take care of." My voice dropped low. "You had no right." "And you had every right," she fired back. "You visited, what, once every few months? Sent money? Called from your nice apartment in the city while I was changing her clothes, cleaning up after accidents, staying awake all night because she was hallucinating and thought strangers were in the yard? I asked to come home. And I said no. That wasn't your decision to make." "No," she said, stepping closer, "but somebody had to make decisions, Nora, and it sure as hell wasn't going to be you." For a split second, I saw us as children again, standing in the kitchen after Dad died, both angry, both terrified, both deciding on separate versions of survival. Then Denise brushed past me and kept walking. I spent that night at the Cedar Crest Motel off Route 11, the one with thin walls, scratchy sheets, and lamps that made everybody look like they were already half gone. I sat on the edge of the bed in my funeral dress and replayed the day until my thoughts turned sour. Had Mama asked for me? Had she known I was outside? Had she believed I simply didn't come? There are some questions grief asks that have no right answer. That night, they circled like flies. At 8:07 the next morning, my phone rang. Unknown local number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me said answer. "Ms. Bennett?" a man asked. "Yes. My name is Thomas Keene. I'm your mother's attorney." I sat up straighter. My mother had an attorney? She did. "And I need you to come to my office this morning if possible." I looked out the motel window at the gray parking lot, at a vending machine humming beside the ice maker. "Why?" There was a pause just long enough to make my stomach tighten. "Because your mother changed her will in March," he said. "And because based on what I heard happened yesterday, I think you should hear the rest in person." His office was above an old insurance agency on Main Street, across from the courthouse. Same brick building, same creaking stairs, same smell of dust and coffee that had probably been there since 1982. Thomas Keene was in his 60s, silver-haired, thin-framed, with the tired eyes of a man who had spent years handling other people's grief and greed. He shook my hand, closed the office door, and gestured for me to sit. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said, and unlike everyone else the day before, he said it like he meant it. I nodded, too drained to thank him. He slid a thick manila envelope across the desk. "This was left with instructions to give it directly to you if I believed you were being prevented from participating in the funeral or from receiving information regarding the estate." I stared at the envelope but didn't touch it yet. She expected this? Mr. Keene exhaled slowly. "Your mother was more aware of the tension between you and your sister than either of you probably realized." A cold wave moved through me. "What's in there?" "A letter from your mother. A flash drive. Copies of revised estate documents. Some account statements she asked me to preserve outside the home." I looked up sharply. "Outside the home?" He folded his hands. "Your mother had concerns." "About Denise?" He chose his words carefully. About control. About access. About whether her wishes would be respected. For a moment the room went quiet except for the ticking wall clock. Then I finally picked up the envelope. My hand shook before I even opened it. The letter was written in Mama's looping blue ink handwriting, the kind that leaned slightly right and always looked calmer than the person writing it. Nora, if you're reading this, something has gone the way I feared it might. I had to stop there. My throat closed so fast I couldn't swallow. Mr. Keene stood and set a box of tissues near my elbow, then moved to the window to give me privacy without leaving the room. I kept reading. First, I need you to know this, I did not keep you away. I have never wanted you away. If you weren't called in time, if you were told not to come, if you were treated like an outsider after I was gone, please don't carry that pain as proof I stopped loving you. It isn't true. I know what Denise has carried. I know what she gave up. I know she is tired in ways pride will never let her confess. But tired people can become hard, and hard people can start mistaking control for love. Over the last year, I began to suspect not all of your messages were reaching me. I also began to suspect not all of mine were reaching you. So I made arrangements. By the time I finished that paragraph, I was crying so hard I had to put the paper down. My mother knew. She had known. All those nights I had lain awake wondering whether she thought I'd stopped trying, she had known. When I could read again, I kept going. Mr. Keene has copies of my updated will and trust instructions. I appointed you executor because I need one person who is not living inside this anger to see things clearly. Do not mistake this for punishment. It is protection. There is a cedar chest in the attic, under the east window. Inside are my journals, some family papers, and things I need you to see before you decide what kind of woman your sister has become. Please read everything before you act. And baby, whatever Denise says, whatever this town says, whatever you've said to yourself over the years, you were loved every single day of your life. I pressed the letter to my mouth and bent forward, my shoulders shaking. Not delicate tears. Not movie tears. The ugly kind that leave you gasping and ashamed of how badly you needed one sentence to save you. You were loved every single day of your life. Mr. Keene waited until I could breathe again. Then he sat back down and turned a document toward me. Your mother's house was to remain part of the estate until liquidated, he said gently. Proceeds split evenly after debts and final expenses. Personal effects itemized. Some specific gifts to church friends, your aunt, and Denise's daughter Emma. I wiped my face. Denise told everyone Mama left the house to her. Mr. Keene's mouth flattened. That is not what the current will says. A hard silence fell between us. There's more, he said. I already hated those words. Your mother also directed that all withdrawals from her primary account during the last 18 months be reviewed. I looked up. Why? He slid over a second folder filled with statements highlighted in yellow. Because she noticed money missing. I stared at line after line of cash withdrawals. Debit purchases. A home equity payment I didn't recognize. Charges at a pharmacy in Knoxville, a furniture outlet, an online lender. My hands went cold all over again. How much? Enough that it matters, he said. I sat back and closed my eyes. This wasn't just grief anymore. It was grief with a ledger. An hour later, I walked out of Thomas Keene's office with my mother's letter in my bag, the revised will in my hand, and a key to a house my sister had already told the town was hers. I should have gone straight there. Instead, I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot and called into work. My supervisor answered on the second ring. Nora? Everything okay? I looked at the courthouse steps, the flag shifting in the wind, the old man in overalls drinking coffee outside the feed store like the world hadn't just slid off its axis. No, I said honestly. But I'm going to handle it. When I pulled into Mama's driveway just before noon, Denise's SUV was already there. The hydrangeas by the porch were half dead from summer heat. A black trash bag sat by the front steps, full of paper plates and funeral programs. The sight of it hit me almost as hard as the church door had. My mother reduced to leftovers. I used the key Mr. Keene had given me, but it didn't fit. The locks had been changed. I knocked once, then harder. Denise opened the door with my mother's ceramic sugar bowl in her hands. For one stupid second, that was what I noticed most, that she was carrying the sugar bowl Mama used every morning, the one with the tiny painted strawberries near the rim. "Nora," she said flatly. "You just don't learn." I held up the estate papers. "Move." She glanced at them but didn't budge. "That won't help you." "Actually, it will. Mama made me executor." That landed. Just a flicker. Just enough. Then she laughed, but it came out brittle. "Of course she did. You always were the sentimental favorite." My head jerked back. "You locked me out of her funeral and you want to talk about favorites?" "I'm talking about reality." She set the sugar bowl down on the hall table and crossed her arms. "You got the soft side of her. The sweet notes. The birthday phone calls. I got the bills, the pills, the midnight falls, the diapers, the panic attacks, the screaming when she didn't know where she was." Her face was red now, anger moving under her skin like a fever. "And now, after all of that, you show up with papers like some out-of-town manager coming to inspect the damage." I swallowed. "If you used her money." "If?" She barked out a laugh. "You think caregiving is free? You think gas is free? You think feeding this house, heating this house, repairing this house was all charity? You should have documented it." "Oh, I'm sorry," she snapped. "I forgot to keep neat little spreadsheets while I was cleaning our mother off the bathroom floor." The words hit hard because they were true in the way painful things often are. Not the theft. Not the lies. But the burden. Still, pain didn't make her right. "I'm going into that house," I said quietly. "No, you're not." "Denise." No, her voice cracked, and suddenly I saw not just rage but fear. "You don't get to come in here and turn me into the villain because you finally decided to feel guilty loud enough for people to hear." I stepped closer until we were almost shoulder to shoulder. "This stopped being about guilt when you kept me from saying goodbye." For a long moment, we just stood there breathing. Then a screen door creaked behind her. A girl I barely recognized stepped into the hallway. Emma. The last time I'd seen my niece in person, she was 13 and missing her front tooth. Now she was nearly 18, tall and narrow-faced, with Mama's eyes and Denise's wary posture. She looked from her mother to me, then down at the floor. "Mom," she said softly, "Mr. Keene called this morning." Denise's jaw tightened. Emma swallowed. "He left a message. He said Aunt Nora has legal access." The silence that followed felt like an elevator cable about to snap. Finally Denise moved aside. "Take whatever paper souvenirs you want," she said. "But don't expect me to help you pretend you were here for any of this." I walked into my mother's house like a trespasser in my own childhood. The air smelled faintly of lavender, canned soup, and the lemon oil Mama used on the furniture. Her cardigan still hung over the back of the recliner. Reading glasses on the side table. Half-finished crossword puzzle. The indentation in the couch cushion where she always sat. I had spent years preparing for her death in the abstract, the way people do when illness lingers. None of that prepared me for the unbearable intimacy of her absence. Emma followed me into the living room while Denise banged cabinets in the kitchen loud enough to count as a message. "I'm sorry about yesterday," Emma whispered. I looked at her. "Did you know she was going to do that?" Emma hesitated too long. My shoulder sagged. "She told me you weren't coming," Emma said finally. "Then when she saw your car, she said. She said if anybody tried to stop her, they could leave too." There was no blame in Emma's voice. Just exhaustion beyond her age. "How long have things been like this?" I asked. She looked toward the kitchen. Since Grandma got worse. Maybe before. I nodded, because I didn't trust myself to speak. The attic stairs still groaned on the third step, just like they had when I was 10 and sneaking up there with a flashlight. Dust rose in warm shafts around me as I climbed. Under the east window, covered with an old quilt, sat the cedar chest. My mother had been right. I knelt in front of it and lifted the lid. Inside were journals stacked in neat bundles tied with ribbon. A metal recipe tin. An envelope labeled Nora in block letters. A photo album. And on top of everything else, a pile of unopened cards, birthday cards, Christmas cards, Mother's Day cards, all addressed in my handwriting. I went still. My fingers hovered over the top one like I was afraid it might burn me. It was the card I had sent for Mama's 72nd birthday. The yellow one with daisies on the front. I had written 6 pages in it because I'd missed her party after getting stuck at work during a hospice crisis. I remembered crying in my car afterward because I knew Denise would turn my absence into one more indictment. The envelope was slit open. Inside, my card was still there. Mama never got it. I opened another. Christmas 2 years ago. Another. Mother's Day. Another with a Nashville postmark and a note about how I'd be home next month no matter what Denise said. All of them opened. None of them given to her. I don't know how long I sat there in the attic with those cards around me. Long enough for grief to change shape. This was no longer the vague tragedy of a family that had drifted apart. This was architecture. Deliberate walls. Built one message at a time. Beneath the cards, I found printed call logs. My number, over and over. Voicemails noted in my mother's shaky handwriting. Nora called Tuesday 8:12 p.m. Wanted to tell me about work. Denise said I was sleeping. Nora called Sunday after church. Wanted recipe for pound cake. Must call her back when Denise is calmer. My chest hurt so badly I had to lean against the cedar chest to stay upright. Then I opened the envelope with my name on it. Inside was a note. These are the things she kept from me and from you. I needed one honest person to see it. There was also a flash drive. And a smaller folded page in Mama's hand. Before you hate your sister completely, read my green journal from January through May. That instruction was so specifically Mama it broke something open in me. Even from beyond the grave, she was still trying to keep one daughter from becoming cruel and the other from becoming unreachable. I took the green journal downstairs and sat at the kitchen table where Mama had taught us long division, where she'd iced birthday cakes, where Denise and I had once shellacked popsicle stick birdhouses and laughed until milk came out my nose. The first entry was dated January 6th. Denise is so tired I can hear it in how she closes drawers. Sometimes I pretend to be asleep to give her 10 quiet minutes. Another entry from February. Nora says she can come stay in March. Denise says it will upset me. I don't know if that is true or if Denise is afraid I will ask Nora to see more than she wants seen. Then, late March. I told Denise she must stop deciding for me. She cried in the pantry. Said I don't understand what it costs to keep everyone from leaving. That sentence worries me. I pressed my hand over my mouth. A voice came from the doorway. She wrote about me, didn't she? Denise stood there with her arms wrapped around herself, not angry now. Guarded. Older somehow. I looked at her over the journal. She knew. Denise's expression didn't change, but her eyes did. Just a flicker. Just enough. Knew what? She asked. That you kept my cards. My calls. That you told her things that weren't true. Her chin lifted. And what did she tell you that was true? That you were always trying? That you meant well? Congratulations. Intentions must feel great from 4 hours away. I stood up so fast the chair leg scraped the floor. Don't you dare turn this around. Turn what around? She shot back. You want the truth? Fine. The truth is you got to love her in memories and phone calls. I got to love her in urine, confusion, insurance fights, and a woman who looked at me some nights and asked where her husband was. Her voice broke on the last word. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Emma appeared again, pale and rigid, and held out her phone. "Mom," she said, "the bank is calling." Denise took it, but not before I saw the panic hit her face. That afternoon, Thomas Keene called me back to his office. He had spent the morning contacting the bank and reviewing the estate account. By the time I got there, he had 3 folders open and his reading glasses halfway down his nose. "There's a home equity line on the house," he said without preamble. I stared at him. Mama would never have done that. She didn't sign the latest draw request herself. I sat slowly. Then who did? He met my eyes. "That's what we're trying to establish." "No," I thought. "That's what we already know." The amount was enough to explain some things and ruin others. Denise had been making payments, but irregularly. There were also personal loans, credit card balances, and several transfers to a rehab facility outside Knoxville. "Who's in rehab?" I asked. Mr. Keene looked surprised. "You don't know?" "No." He paused. "Your nephew, Caleb." I blinked. "Denise's son?" He nodded. "Admitted twice in the last year." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Caleb was 23, Denise's older child, the kind of boy who once built tree forts with scrap lumber and used to cry if you yelled at the dog. I hadn't seen him in person in nearly 4 years. We had drifted the way extended family drifts when one person becomes the official gatekeeper. "He's using?" I asked. Mr. Keene's expression stayed gentle. "I only know what the records indicate." I left his office with a new kind of ache. Not excuse. Never excuse. But context. Context is dangerous when you're angry. It doesn't erase harm. It just makes revenge less satisfying. That night Emma knocked on my motel door. She was wearing an oversized sweatshirt and carrying a grocery bag. "I brought you dinner," she said. Inside the bag was a ham sandwich, a bruised apple, and a slice of pound cake wrapped in foil. The smell of it nearly undid me. "Mama's recipe?" I asked. Emma nodded. "Grandma taught me last summer." I moved aside and let her in. She sat at the little motel table, twisting the sleeve of her sweatshirt around her fingers. She had the posture of somebody used to listening for conflict in the next room. "I'm not trying to betray my mom," she said before I could speak. "I need you to know that." "I know." She nodded once, relieved and miserable all at once. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out an old flip phone. "It was Grandma's backup phone," she said. "She kept it in the sewing basket after Mom started carrying her regular one around." I took it carefully. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because Grandma used it when Mom was at work or asleep." Emma looked down. "And because one night I saw my mom delete a voicemail from you before Grandma heard it." The room seemed to sharpen around the edges. "Did Grandma know?" "At the end. I think she knew enough." Emma swallowed. "She asked me once if I thought being needed could make a person mean." I closed my eyes. "What did you say?" Emma's voice got very small. I said yes. I didn't sleep much after that. The phone had dozens of saved voicemails. Some of mine. Some from church friends. One from Mama to Mr. Keene asking him to confirm the papers are where Denise can't get to them. Another from Mama herself to me, never sent, recorded as a draft. "Nora, sweetheart, if this sends by accident, then maybe God finally got tired of waiting on the rest of us. I don't know why it's become so hard to speak plainly in my own house. I just want you to know I miss you, and I know you're trying." I sat on that motel bed in the dark with the phone glowing in my hand and cried so quietly it felt like my ribs were caving in. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery. Fresh dirt. Wet grass. A temporary marker with my mother's name spelled correctly but somehow still wrong because no stone could summarize a woman who taught Sunday school, burned toast every Tuesday, loved game shows, and saved every ribbon from every gift because you never know when pretty string will come in handy. I stood there a long time. Did you know? I asked the grave. About Caleb? About the loans? About how bad it got? The wind moved through the trees. No answer. Then I heard a car door shut behind me. Denise. Of course. She walked over in jeans and a sweatshirt, no makeup, no armor except whatever she'd managed to gather inside herself overnight. She looked older than 45. Much older. I should have known you'd come here, she said. It's where she is. She looked at the grave and nodded once. Not all of her. I turned toward her. She wanted her ashes scattered at Laurel Lake, Denise said, eyes fixed forward. Dad proposed to her there. We were supposed to go next week. I stared. You planned a church funeral and didn't tell me about the scattering? She rubbed her forehead. I didn't tell anybody. Not officially. Why? At that, she finally looked at me, and there it was, that fear again. Not of me. Of exposure. Because she changed things at the end, Denise said. She started talking to Keen behind my back. Hiding papers. Asking Emma strange questions. Looking at me like, she trailed off. Like what? Like she didn't trust me. The words hung between us. Did she have a reason not to? I asked. Denise laughed once, but there was no bite in it. Just fatigue. You really want the whole answer? Yes. She inhaled slowly. Caleb started using after his back injury. Pain pills first, then whatever came after. I put him in rehab once, and he came out clean for 3 months. Then he relapsed. Then again. Insurance covered some. Not enough. She looked away. I borrowed. Then I borrowed more. At first it was from my own cards. Then against the house because I thought I could catch up before Mama noticed. Then Mama noticed. I felt sick. So you took her money. I kept the lights on. I paid for aids when I could. I paid for the ramp, the prescriptions, the plumbing when the bathroom flooded. You also kept me away. Her face hardened again. Because every time you called, she lit up. And every time she lit up, she remembered what she didn't have. The daughter who could leave. The easier child. The one she still spoke softly to. I stared at her. You think being loved gently means being loved more? You wouldn't understand. No, I said, my voice rising despite myself. I understand exactly enough now. You were drowning, and instead of asking for help, you decided the rest of us should drown too. Her eyes flashed with tears she refused to let fall. You got to leave, she whispered. Do you know what that does to a person? Watching someone else walk through the door you never believed would open for you? That hit harder than I wanted it to. Because there it was. The old wound. The true one. Not money. Not probate. Not even Mama. Permission. She had never forgiven me for receiving it. I thought that would be the moment I hated her most. Instead, it was the moment something shifted. Not into forgiveness. Not yet. But into understanding dangerous enough to complicate anger. That afternoon, I read the rest of the Green Journal. One entry stopped me cold. March 28th. Denise said, you told Nora to go and left me here. I said I never left her. She said that was the problem. That I needed her so long I stopped seeing she was disappearing inside it. I set the journal down and stared at the wall. My mother had seen it. Not all of it, not soon enough to stop it, but she had seen Denise vanishing into obligation until obligation soured into possession. Another entry, from April. If love becomes a contest over who suffered more, nobody wins. I wish I had said that when there was still time to be heard. The twist I hadn't expected was this. Mama had not divided us by accident. She had loved us in ways shaped by our weaknesses, and those different kinds of love had become evidence in a trial neither of us realized we were staging. She told me to go because she knew guilt would destroy me. She leaned on Denise because Denise never admitted when she was breaking. One daughter got freedom. One got purpose. Each of us spent years envying the half of love the other received. That truth didn't excuse what Denise had done. But it meant the story was bigger than one villain and one victim. And somehow that made it hurt more. 2 days later, the situation exploded. Mr. Keene called at 7:30 a.m. to tell me the bank had frozen remaining estate funds pending review. By 9, Denise was leaving me furious voicemails accusing me of trying to ruin Caleb's recovery. By 10, my Aunt Linda had informed half the church prayer chain that I was dragging family business into legal trouble. By noon, Caleb himself showed up at the motel. I opened the door to a tall, hollow-eyed young man who looked like a rough sketch of the freckled boy I remembered. He held himself stiffly, like his body and spirit were no longer entirely on speaking terms. "Aunt Nora," he said. I stepped back to let him in. He didn't sit. Just stood by the window with his hands shoved in his pockets. "Mom said you froze everything," he said. "I didn't freeze anything. The bank did once the estate review started." He swallowed and looked at the carpet. "She used the money for me." "I know." His jaw worked. "I didn't ask her to steal from Grandma," he said, and the word steal nearly tore him in half. "But I knew it was bad. I just didn't ask enough questions because every time I did, she'd say she had it handled." I looked at him for a long moment. "Why are you here, Caleb?" He finally met my eyes. "Because if this turns into cops and court and public shame, she won't survive it." That was an honest sentence. Too honest to manipulate. "She kept me from Mama," I said. His face tightened. "I know. She let me believe my own mother didn't want me." "I know." Those 2 words, spoken by a son who had his own wreckage to carry, landed differently than pity ever could. He sat down heavily on the edge of the chair. "I was in Knoxville when Grandma took that turn in May," he said. "Mom called and told me not to come because she didn't want me high at the hospital. I got clean there. For real this time. But by the time I got back, she was," he wiped his face hard. "Different." I waited. "Grandma asked about you once in front of me," he said. "Mom told her you'd sent money but couldn't take off work. Grandma got quiet after that. Real quiet." He stared at his hands. I should have said something. Regret sounds the same no matter the age of the mouth speaking it. By evening, I had heard enough truth from enough corners to know where this was heading. There would be no clean victory. No version where I exposed Denise and walked away feeling righteous. Too many lives were knotted into hers, Emma finishing high school, Caleb trying to stay sober, a town already circling the gossip like crows. But there also would be no pretending. Not anymore. Mr. Keene and I arranged a family meeting for the following Saturday at Laurel Lake, where Mama had wanted her ashes scattered. Immediate family only. Denise agreed after learning Mr. Keene had one more item left in escrow, the video on the flash drive. She thought, I think, that she could control that room the way she'd controlled every other one. She was wrong. Laurel Lake sat 20 minutes outside town, ringed by pines and old picnic tables etched with initials. Our father had taken us fishing there when we were kids. Mama said the sunset over that water made everything look briefly forgivable. The day of the gathering was clear and hot. Mr. Keene arrived with the urn, a portable speaker, and an envelope of final documents. Aunt Linda came despite being told not to. So did Pastor Collins, which I hadn't expected, though later I realized Mama probably had. Emma stood beside Caleb. Denise kept both hands wrapped around the urn box like she still believed grip was the same thing as love. We gathered near the dock. No hymn. No organ. No performance. Just wind over water and the kind of silence that makes people reveal themselves. Mr. Keene cleared his throat. Before we proceed, your mother instructed me to play this recording in the presence of both daughters if there was dispute concerning her wishes. Denise turned sharply. This is unnecessary. No, I said, without taking my eyes off her. It's not. Mr. Keene pressed play. The speaker crackled. Then my mother's face appeared on the tablet screen in his hands, recorded from her living room chair. She looked thinner than I remembered, softer around the mouth, but unmistakably herself. Her blue cardigan. Her reading glasses halfway down her nose. Her expression steady. Denise made a small sound beside me, almost like pain. Well, Mama said on the recording, if you're seeing this, then somebody has made things harder than they needed to be. A few strained laughs flickered and died. Mama looked directly into the camera. Nora, Denise, I love you both. That is the first truth and the one I need said before any other. My vision blurred instantly. If you are standing together while this plays, then God has already done one miracle. If you are standing apart, then listen especially close. Nobody moved. I know resentment has lived in this family longer than anybody wanted to name it. Some of it belongs to grief. Some belongs to exhaustion. Some belongs to me. Denise's grip tightened on the urn box. I should have spoken plainly years ago, Mama continued. I should have told Denise that being dependable does not mean being responsible for everyone's survival. I should have told Nora that distance can become its own kind of wound, even when love is still present. And I should have told both of you that comparing pain will poison any house faster than money ever could. Aunt Linda started crying softly behind us. Then Mama did something I had not expected. She addressed Denise first. Baby, if you kept your sister from me, if you kept me from her, then you did wrong. I know why you might have done it. I know fear can dress itself up as protection. But love that cages is still a cage. Denise flinched as if struck. Mama turned slightly, as if gathering strength. And if you took what wasn't yours because you believed no one would help you carry all this, then hear me now, needing help is not failure. Stealing silence from your own family is. No one made a sound. Even the wind seemed to back off. Then Mama smiled, small and unbearably tender. Nora, if anger has hardened you by now, let it soften where it can. Justice and cruelty are not the same thing. Don't confuse them because you're hurting. That one went straight through me. If there is anything worth leaving behind, she said, it is this: tell the truth before pain tells it for you. Ask for help before resentment starts keeping score. And never let the loudest wound in the room decide what love looked like. She looked down briefly at her hands, then back up. I wanted my ashes scattered here because this is where your father asked me to build a life with him. We did not build it perfectly. Lord knows that. But there was love in it. Real love. Enough to start again if you choose. Her face softened. I forgive what I understand. And I pray you will too, in time. The screen went black. Nobody moved for several seconds. Then Denise made a sound I had never heard from her in all my life. Not a sob exactly. More like a structure collapsing from the inside. She set the urn box down on the picnic table with shaking hands and took 2 steps back as if the ground itself had turned against her. I was there, she said hoarsely, not looking at anyone. I was there every day. I know, I said. Her head snapped toward me. No. You know pieces. You know papers. You know journals. Tears streaked down her face now, wild and furious. You don't know what it was like hearing her call for people who weren't coming, people who got to have clean lives and holidays and sleep-in choices. I called. I shouted, and my own voice surprised me with its force. I came when you let me. I begged to come more. You made me feel like my love was a problem because it didn't look like yours. We were breathing hard now, both of us stripped down past dignity. Because yours got applause. Denise cried. Yours got to stay beautiful. Mine got ugly. That sentence settled over the lake heavier than any accusation yet. Because it was true. Caregiving had made her ugly in ways no one wanted to witness. And instead of asking to be rescued, she had decided to punish beauty wherever she saw it. I stepped closer. Mama didn't make you a villain, I said, my voice shaking. You did that yourself when you chose to lock doors instead of asking for help. Denise covered her mouth with one hand, shoulders heaving. For the first time, Emma moved toward her. Not to defend. Not to shield. Just to stand near. Mom, she whispered. Denise looked at her daughter, then at Caleb, then at the urn on the table. I didn't know how to stop once it started, she said. That was the closest thing to a confession we were ever going to get. Mr. Keene stepped forward quietly. The estate can pursue formal action, he said, or it can enter restitution terms privately, provided all parties agree. Everybody looked at me. It was the kind of moment people imagine feels powerful. It didn't. It felt exhausting. I thought of the church door slamming in my face. Thought of unopened birthday cards in the attic. Thought of my mother sitting in her living room recording a message because plain speech had failed in life and she was trying one last time from the edge of death. Justice and cruelty are not the same thing. I looked at Denise. You repay what you took, I said. The house gets sold like Mama wanted. Your portion goes through the estate until the debts are settled. We set aside what Emma was left and make sure nobody touches it. Caleb's recovery isn't funded by lies anymore. And from this day on, if you ever try to rewrite my relationship with our mother again, I will not protect you from the consequences. Denise stared at me through tears. You'd really do that? She asked. Yes. Something in her face gave way then, not absolution, not relief, but recognition. Maybe even shame. She nodded once. Then we scattered Mama's ashes. Denise went first, hands trembling so badly Emma had to steady the urn. Then me. Then Caleb. Then Emma. The ashes moved over the water in a pale drifting ribbon and vanished into sunlight. I expected some thunderclap of closure. Some grand emotional release. What came instead was quiet. The kind that only arrives after truth has finally been spoken where everyone can hear it. In the weeks that followed, Cedar Hollow did what small towns always do. It talked. Some people took Denise's side. Some took mine. Some switched depending on who they were standing next to. But gossip loses momentum when there's no mystery left to feed it. The house sold by October. I walked through it one last time before closing. I took Mama's recipe box, the strawberry sugar bowl, Dad's old tackle box, and the green journal. Denise took the cedar chest and the family china after the debt arrangements were signed. Emma left for college in Knoxville with the money Mama had set aside protected in a trust Mr. Keene personally oversaw. Caleb stayed in treatment and, for the first time, kept showing up. Denise and I did not become close. People love stories where one big confrontation fixes everything, where years of hurt dissolve into one tearful hug on a dock at sunset. Real life is less theatrical and more demanding than that. Forgiveness, when it comes at all, usually arrives in work clothes. Months passed before Denise and I spoke about anything other than documents, logistics, and Caleb's progress. The first non-necessary conversation happened in a grocery store parking lot in late November. She was loading canned goods into her trunk when she saw me. For a second, both of us looked like we might retreat. Then she said, Emma says you've been helping her with gas money. She's in school, I said. I wanted to. Denise nodded. A long pause. Then, without looking at me, she said, Mama's pound cake never came out right for me. Always sank in the middle. I almost smiled. You overmixed the batter, I said. She let out the smallest breath of a laugh. That sounds like something I'd do. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was the first doorway that wasn't locked. I went back to Nashville that winter with my mother's journal in my suitcase and her voice living inside me in a way grief had not erased. At work, I found myself listening differently to families. To the daughter who snapped too quickly. To the son who talked only about insurance forms. To the wife who insisted she was fine while her hands shook over the coffee she never drank. Pain tells strange stories when people don't give it language soon enough. That was the lesson my family learned too late. Not that love always wins. It doesn't, not by itself. Not that family can't hurt you. It can, sometimes worse than anybody else. The lesson was simpler and harder. Unspoken need becomes resentment, resentment becomes control, and control will call itself love right up until it destroys the thing it wanted to keep. If my sister had said, years earlier, I cannot carry this alone, maybe everything would have been different. If I had stopped accepting filtered updates and driven home more often no matter how unwelcome I felt, maybe something would have broken open sooner. If my mother had forced the truth into daylight before illness made daylight harder to reach, maybe she would have had a real goodbye with both daughters beside her. We don't get to rewrite those maybes. We only get to live better because of them. The last message I ever listened to on Mama's backup phone became the one I saved. It was from me, recorded on a Sunday night months before she died. Hey, Mama. It's Nora. No rush calling back. I just wanted to tell you I made your chicken and dumplings and somehow still messed up the broth. Call me when you can and tell me what I did wrong. Love you. At the very end of the recording, before it cut off, there was a faint sound in the background. Mama's voice, far away, saying, "Is that my girl?" For the longest time, I couldn't listen to that without crying. Now, when I hear it, I still grieve. But I don't doubt anymore. I was her girl. Every single day of my life. And for a woman who spent one terrible afternoon locked out in the rain believing she'd missed her final chance to matter, that truth was enough to rebuild a soul around. If this story resonated with you, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoy meaningful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more.